In the last topic, we explored the ego as an operating system, especially how it develops behaviors through our subconscious by using our desires and feelings to influence our behavior, to avoid the pain, the emotional pain that is created by our base fears. And as it does so, it may not necessarily be conducive to our long-term state of well-being. Now, in this topic, I'd like to enter the cave of fears and invite you to join me as we explore some examples of desires and feelings around our base fears, as well as some resultant unhealthy ego behaviors to avoid these fears, which may ultimately land us on the rocks. Now, this reminds me of a story by Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, which he called Death in Tehran. There was this rich and mighty Persian who was walking in his garden with one of his servants, and the servant cried out that he had just encountered death, who had threatened him. He begged his master to please give him his fastest horse so that he could make haste and flee to Tehran, which he could reach that same evening. Well, the master consented, and the servant galloped off on the horse. And when the master returned to his house, he himself met Death and questioned him, "Why did you terrify and threaten my servant so?" Well, Death responded, "I did not threaten him. I only showed surprise in still finding him here when I planned to meet him tonight in Tehran." Well, what's the message in the story? As we run from what we fear, we may be running straight towards it. So let's have a look at the fear of separation and abandonment. This fear can lead to the desires and feelings of wanting family security, or wanting to be accepted by our friends, our work colleagues, or our boss, for example. Now, these are not necessarily bad desires or feelings. It's more important how we behave as a result of them. The unhealthy ego may create behaviors to make sure we are accepted by others, which may be to our own detriment. For example, we may become the people pleaser. If I please you, you will not leave me. Or if I keep on pleasing my boss and saying yes to everything, I'll not lose my job. Now, this people pleasing can be okay in the short term, but over time we forget to put our needs first and we end up feeling unhappy. Why? Because we feel unheard and unappreciated. Now, this does descend into the drama game over time, where we explode because we are not being heard or appreciated, and we end up ultimately pushing people away, creating more separation, which we wanted to avoid in the first place. What we ran from, we ended up running towards. Now, when it comes to the fear of loss of control, we may have the desire or feeling of having to do everything ourselves. So instead of trusting others and delegating, we could say to ourselves, if you want something done properly, you need to do it yourself. And this is to avoid the risk of losing control. Again, this may work in the short term. You get everything done the way you like it, but in the long run, you have less time for yourself, less time for your family, less time to relax. And as you do this work day in, day out for everybody, you end up becoming more stressed, and you start to feel you're losing control in your personal and family life. So you can see how, as we try and control everything, so we too are controlled. Now, when it comes to personal relationships, the desire and feeling to control the relationship can translate into behavior where the other person is told who they can and cannot see, for example, or how they must or must not behave. We keep on telling others maybe what they should, could, and must do over and over again. And what may be happening is we may be squeezing them so tight that they actually slip out of our hands. So what we are trying to avoid, we end up creating. Now, when it comes to the fear of rejection and low self-worth, well, we may feel that if others know things about us, they will reject us. If they knew my secrets, we can pretend to be someone we are not. Or we can say to ourselves, I wish I could be like that person. But as we hide from others, we are effectively rejecting our own true self through this shame, which leads to that feeling of, I am not good enough, reinforcing this fear. Now, when it comes to loneliness, that feeling or desire to avoid being alone can lead us into the very next rebound relationship, which may not be well suited to our well-being in the long run. It could end up being a controlling or abusive relationship maybe, which results in us feeling more alone than ever. Now, the same also applies to the friends we spend time with. If we're afraid of being alone, we may end up spending time with the wrong people for the sake of just having company, and again, end up feeling lonely even in their company. Now, the fear of inadequacy may bring with it the feeling that we must be right all the time, and the unwillingness to acknowledge our own shortcomings. We can end up justifying our own negative behaviors and avoiding critical feedback in our personal or our work lives. Now, this feedback may be critical for us to personally grow and avoid making the same mistakes again and again. And consequently, as we avoid this feedback, we may repeat the same mistakes again and again and end up feeling more inadequate. Now, lastly, the fear of trust and surrender, or letting go, can bring with it that feeling that we must have the answers for everything. We must know everything, including what lies ahead in the future. Now, instead of accepting the unfolding mystery of uncertainty, we try and control it, worrying with all our what ifs. Now, remember, it's our genetic makeup to be cautious about what is in the moving grass, and the future has a lot of that moving grass, which we fill with potential saber-toothed tigers. Now, the unhealthy ego holds on to the certainty, which really prevents us from truly living in the present moment. And as you will see later, the present moment is another part of where our well-being exists. Now, in exercise 1 of workbook 2, you are given a few additional examples for each base fear over and above what I've shared now. So use these to help identify and label your fears. Working with emotional agility, you'll be required to become the observer, adopting the various positions as you label your fears, and to become curious by asking yourself these 4 questions. Number 1, is the fear absolutely 100% true? Number 2, am I creating any assumptions that create false evidence appearing real? And number 3, who or what would I be if I did not have this fear? And finally, number 4, am I able to let this fear go if it is not 100% true? Now, when you join me in the next topic, we are going to explore what happens when the ego shuts down. When it's under pressure and it goes into the DOS mode that I spoke about previously. Well, this is where the lizard hijacks the wizard. So if you've ever had a time in your life where you've just said things or done things when you've lost your temper, and 20 minutes later you're saying to yourself, I can't believe I actually said that. Why did I do that? Well, join me in the next topic and you'll get a better understanding as to why that happens. So as we finish off now, I leave you with a wonderful quote. What we fear doing most is usually what we most need to do. So I'll see you in the next topic, and until then, take care and stay aware.